So anybody that knows me knows that I'm not particularly fond of the most recent Resident Evil remakes, and frankly, for that matter, not big on Resident Evil 8, and I am dubious at best about Resident Evil 9. So when the new rumors started coming out about the Resident Evil Code Veronica and Zero remakes, I mean, I get it, they're just rumors, and I wasn't even going to report on them, but they're getting a lot of traction in terms of just the trades and the gaming journalists, so I feel like it is worth talking about. So welcome back to Words of Paradise. I'm your host, Leon Idle, and yeah, like I said, I wasn't going to even mention this. I was going to do a video on it, maybe a passing segment in a stream, but when you've got Notebook Check talking about it, and you've got Game Reactor talking about it, and you've got, TwistedVoxel.com talking about it, and you've got Gaming Bible talking about it, like, it isn't inescapable conversation, and not only do I want to talk about why, hey, these are rumors, but we can honestly believe them because we've already gotten Resident Evil 2, 3, 4. Why wouldn't they do these two? It's not much of a leak. It just sort of seems like the obvious thing to jump to. But why this wouldn't be a good idea. So we're going to get into this. Before we do, hit the subscribe button. I'm a nerdy news channel. I cover nerdy news every day. And yeah, we're going to go over the Gaming Bible article. Resident Evil leak confirms remake of the last game we expected. Now, this is an issue with gaming journalism, guys. Why would this be the last game you expect? Like I said, we've already gotten a remake of 2, 3, and 4. And frankly, the remake of Resident Evil 1, the one that came out in 2002 and has since been, HD remastered, they've had the tank control change, modern control change, that's the gold standard for remake. That's how all remakes should be done. Frankly, if Resident Evil 2 and 3 had gotten remakes in the vein of the original Resident Evil 1, I'd have been all in. It would have been a true thing of beauty. Resident Evil 4 still didn't need a remake. The original Resident Evil 4 holds up brilliantly, and we can all agree that, and maybe we can't all agree because a lot of y'all just didn't play those games back in the day or are just so blinded by modern day remakes and shiny new graphics. I mean, we can all agree 3 sucked. I don't know anybody that actually considers 3 to be not even just a good remake, but a good game. But 4 is also worse. Like Resident Evil 4 remake is worse than the original. But 2 is the best of a bad situation. I still think that what we got out of the remake for number 2 isn't worth what we lost from the original, but that's neither here nor there. The point is, this isn't the last thing we expected. In fact, we have been expecting this, and I've been dreading the official announcement from Capcom ever since. Over the years, there have been a lot of Resident Evil games, ranging in quality from the best to the very worst the genre of the series helped to define. I mean, I agree with the whole very worst portion in terms of Remake 3. The best? I mean, and the only modern Resident Evil game, and when I say modern, I mean post-6, that I would consider truly good, is Resident Evil 7. And Resident Evil 7 falls apart in the third act, but to be fair, that's a lot of games, movies, TV shows, a lot of nowadays falls apart in the third act. People who writing nowadays don't know how to do endings. But that's neither here nor there. The point is, yeah, ranging in quality from the best to the very worst. I mean, how about ranging in quality from middling to the very worst, and does a good job at faking like it's the best because people are obsessed with shiny new visuals. In recent years, developer Capcom has taken to revamping the earlier games of the series with full remakes. Resident Evil 1 through 4 have all undergone the remake treatment with impressive success, so it's little wonder attention is now drawn to the game. What games are up next? According to information shared by leaker Dusk Golem on Twitter/X, the next games in line are Resident Evil Code Veronica, Resident Evil 0, both of which are originally released before the already remade 4. Alright, now, if they're saying this is the last game we expected because 0 and Code Veronica were skipped over to do Resident Evil 4, alright, I guess, but Resident Evil 4 is such a massively popular game, the original, it unfortunately makes sense, like from a business perspective, from a financial perspective, to do that one next, especially if the last one you did was 3. Like, modern day consumers are kind of retarded. I can imagine they'd be like, wait, what do you mean we're going from 3 to Code Veronica or 3 to 0? Like, hey, if it doesn't have that next numerical number right after it, then yeah, modern day gamers are going to be confused. Again, especially because so few people nowadays are willing to go back and actually play these older gems, or frankly, in the case of both these games, in my opinion, masterpieces. Like, every Resident Evil game, every mainline game from 0 to 4 are top tier, golden, damn near, I don't want to say perfect games. They've clearly, of course, all have some issues, especially the original version of Resident Evil 1. That's one of the few instances where, like, the remake, that's truly what you start with. But this jump backwards to games which do largely directly follow the stories from the predecessors is an interesting one. Now, let's stop there. This is why these remakes don't need to be done. Because they don't largely follow the stories from the predecessors. They do it in the most simple way. That way the vapid modern gamer can assume they're getting the perfect story, or assume they're getting, what the developers truly intentioned, when that's not the case. We've got character changes, lore changes, entire atmosphere changes. I mean, it's a slap in the face. It's yes, these are remakes that sure loosely follow the story, but if every single time that you're redoing the story, you're giving us a worse version of said story, and Resident Evil 2, 3, and 4 remakes are all worse stories than their original counterparts. Take the graphics out of it, take the modern day controls out of it. We're looking at just the content that is the story as written. 2, 3, and 4 are inherently worse stories than the originals. So, yeah, no, I don't think they follow it largely from their predecessor. With the initial skip to Resident Evil 4 lightly down to lessening commercial risk in the more popular game. Yeah, exactly. The remakes are set to release in 2027 and 2028, though it's unclear in what order. The development team behind Resident Evil 2 and 4 remakes is heading up work into Code Veronica, while the Resident Evil 3 team is taking the reins for Zero. Alright, let's, again, this is a rumor. But for the sake of the video, let's assume the rumor is true. Guys, the Resident Evil 3 remake team shouldn't be doing anything else ever in the history of gaming. Like, holy shit, lock them in the basement, feed them a piece of fish once a week to sustain their life, and let them know for the next 90 years to ask forgiveness for what they've done. Like, that team don't need to be doing shit, let alone do they not need to be taking on Zero, which is arguably the most experimental and strange in the classic Resident Evil pantheon. No other game plays like Zero from the original 0, 1, 2, and 3, and Code Veronica, of course. I mean, largely is down to the character switching, the removal of item boxes, things to that effect. But even so, if the team that did Resident Evil 3 couldn't even get a proper remake of Resident Evil 3 out, they fundamentally changed characters. They cut content. I mean, there's no reason on God's green earth that a remake of a game that was on the PS1 should have less content and be shorter than the version on the PlayStation 4. But that's what's happened. If Resident Evil is great about one thing, if there's one amazing aspect of Resident Evil, all of the games across the board, replayability. And they even fumbled the bag on the replayability factor because of the limited amounts of unlockables. And it's, again, just the fact, if we were to take this with the game grain of salt, knowing that they're going to redo Zero, we can already discount the remake of Zero being any good at all. It'll be a travesty. And look, yeah, I'm going to count my chickens before they hatch. Resident Evil Zero will be absolutely disgusting. So let's talk about Code Veronica. The team behind Resident Evil 2 and 4 doing Code Veronica. Here's why that is also a net negative. Because Resident Evil Code Veronica, for anybody that played it, unequivocally the hardest game in the original run of the games. Honestly, probably the hardest game in the Resident Evil franchise, frankly. Now, does that make it a bad game? No, not at all. Resident Evil Code Veronica is an incredible game. But think about modern gaming. Think about the difficulty or lack thereof in the vast majority of any modern game that isn't a Souls-like game. Like, difficulty in gaming is, even hard difficulty games are nothing compared to what we were growing up with the 80s, the 90s, into the early to mid 2000s. So taking what is easily the most difficult game in terms of resource management specifically, and just putting it through a modern lens, dude, that's going to fundamentally break the game on a mechanical level. And that's without even getting into the social aspect of what you exactly know they will do when it comes of changes to Alfred Ashford's character. Like, are you going to tell me that an insane cross-dresser being the main bad guy is going to fly in, either 2027 or 2028? Do you think that the social stigmas are gonna be a-okay to have that happen? I mean, we got Claire Redfield saying some obscene shit to this cross-dressing nut job. And again, we've seen this on X. What was it? Just a couple of days ago on stream, reacted to a video of some tranny motherfucker throwing a fit about how Resident Evil has not traditionally been kind to its LGBT characters. By the way, there's no inclination that Alfred Ashford is LGBT. He's a nutbag who dresses up as his, according to what he thinks, dead twin sister. So, yeah, needless to say, there's a multitude of reasons that Code Veronica isn't going to work, even if it's a game that more or less has been lost to time. It's probably the most inaccessible game in the mainline Resident Evil franchise. That doesn't mean remaking it from the ground up is the correct option. What is the correct option? An HD upscale that you throw out there for, $19.99 or whatever. Just, modernize the controls in the same way you did it with the Resident Evil 1 remake. Give it an HD upscale. Change nothing else. Bingo, bango, bongo. That's all you gotta do. Because again, there are inherent story changes, inherent lore changes. I can only continue to press to you that just the vapid consumer that is the modern day gamer will lap this shit up with no regard for quality beyond, oh look, it's pretty looking, the graphics are modern. Concerns over the team behind the less than well received Resident Evil 3 are being voiced loudly across social media, with one simply saying, why would they ever bring back the team that messed up Resident Evil 3? I'm asking the same question, but the better question is, why are they going to remake these games to begin with? Also, Code Veronica and Resident Evil 0, they're not really that highly regarded in terms of the sales numbers. Like, they just didn't do very well. In fact, Code Veronica signaled the death knell for the original, concept of Resident Evil. Code Veronica, its poor sales and poor reception, yeah, we had Resident Evil 0 afterwards, but it didn't sell well. 0 sold even less. Now, you could chalk that up to it being a GameCube exclusive, but yeah, Code Veronica started off on the Dreamcast, then went to the PS2. PS2 is the biggest system console of all time. And it still didn't really do particularly well. That's why they shifted gears to Resident Evil 4 with the new over-the-shoulder action horror gameplay. It's just not something that people wanted anymore. The fixed camera angles, the slow pacing. Now, I still want stuff like that. I'm a classic horror fan. But how much of that classic horror and what made classic Resident Evil when it comes to Code Veronica and Zero are going to be lost because those sorts of things just aren't well received by modern audiences? If you want classic horror, let's be real, you're going indie this route. That's the only place that's actually giving you true blue horror games. Hopefully Silent Hill F proves me wrong later this year, but that's a whole different discussion. The character switching mechanic in Resident Evil 0 should offer real room for improvement over the original. The original doesn't need improve. The original exists as is for a reason, and it should stay existing as is, because aside from the character switching, which I think works brilliantly and is an awesome way to play the game, considering Resident Evil games aren't just horror games, they are puzzle games, and they add an entirely new dynamic to the puzzle mechanics. But the point is, it shouldn't be changed, even if it's already one of the most dynamic and interesting features in the game. Yeah, exactly. But it's not something that modern gamers are going to want to do. Why would you remake this classic game for people that are not going to appreciate the original? In fact, why are you remaking these games at all for people that didn't appreciate the originals, the people that didn't buy the originals, the people that weren't there, the people that aren't fans? Aside from, this is nostalgia cash grab bait at its best, because you got two different types of consumers here. These games can go out to two different types of consumers. You got person A, loved the originals back in the day, and they want to reclaim that nostalgia. Doesn't matter if the game's actually not as good as the original, because you're not going to know it's not as good as the original until you buy it. And by that point, what does it matter? Capcom already got your money. Or maybe you do like it just as much, if not more, because it's been so long since you've seen those games, or because you've appreciated those games, that you don't realize what a downgrade in quality it is. That was the case for a lot of people for Resident Evil 2 and 4, in my opinion. The remakes of 2 and 4, they've not played the originals in so long, they do not know what a downgrade it is, because they're only remembering, the highlights, the things they loved about 2, and the things that are, the remakes of 2 and 4 did right, that are basically cosmetic. There are, just the surface level tip of the iceberg stuff, and they're not willing to, or frankly have the time to in the modern era, to actually replay the originals, dig beneath the surface, and realize that, oh, these are fundamentally flawed. So yeah, that's your one type of gamer, just the nostalgia consumer. And gamer type number 2 are the people that never played the originals, didn't care about the originals, honestly probably doesn't care about the series at all, just wants to play every new thing that comes out, nom nom nom, shiny shiny, consume, don't forget to obey. That's your other type of gamer, the people that are just going to go out there, buy anything because it's new, stream it, play on their downtime, whatever. Now, is there anything wrong with being that type of consumer? Yes, there is, because it's shit like that keeps making money, that keeps being put out, as the reason these modern day games continue to come out, is because in a lot of instances, they make money. quality be damned, they make money because people just could, like, gamers are truly the worst kind of consumer, unless you're watching me and agree with me, because at this point, you're one of the good ones. But by and large, why did things like Assassin's Creed Shadows succeed, which let's assume it did succeed, since that's what everyone's always talking about. That's what all the trades were talking about. All the gamer trades were wrong. It wasn't a failure. So let's say it did succeed. Even if it did, it doesn't make it a good game. It just means it was a shiny new toy that everybody purchased. And that's what these Resident Evil remakes are. They're devoid of soul, they're shiny new toys for everyone to purchase, and they're nostalgic cash grabs at best. So, yeah, I am willing to believe these rumors are true for a multitude of reasons. One, it just makes sense considering the history of the remakes coming out. And two, at this point, everyone and their goddamn mother's reporting on it. So, are these remakes happening? Yeah. Should they? No, not at all. In fact, they're going to further divide the series and just go into that hole of I'd say the identity crisis that the Resident Evil has been experiencing. Honestly, probably ever since about Resident Evil 5 and onward. But these are just my opinions. Let me know yours in the comments down below, or let me know on X, where you can find me at Bolt the Word. And please do subscribe. I'm a nerdy news channel. I cover nerdy news nearly every day. Not always about the gaming industry, but anime, movies, music, Magic the Gathering, you name it. Check me out on Instagram at wordsparadise_Leon and become a member. For $4.99 a month, you can join the Discord. Choose the articles we go over on a day-to-day basis. Choose the videos we react to on the Friday night live streams. And, of course, get involved with over 200 other vital idols. We are a bright, beautiful, glowing, vibrant community, and I cannot wait to grow even further. Because we do care about diversity. Only one kind of diversity of thought. That's interesting to you. Join the Discord, hit subscribe, and until next time, it is all here in the Nerdosphere. This has been Words of Paradise.